And we're live.
Hello, and welcome to the Modern Romantic Podcast, where we revel and celebrate romanticism through incredible people doing some incredible things. Hello, I am so happy, and I'm still not over Ke Huy Quan winning Best Supporting Actor and Michelle Yeoh winning Best Actress for Everything Everywhere All at Once. If you haven't watched it by now, you should. How dare you? How dare you commit such an atrocity against the art community? Uh, but that's just me. Hi, I'm Trey, and I am joined by my co-host Emily. Hi, Emily. the
Hi.
look, the look on Emily's face is like, wow.
Wow, because I am that committing that atrocity right now because I have not seen this movie, but I want to, and now I feel really bad. Thank you.
Hey, turnabout is fair play. You made me feel bad about the Lord of the Rings. I get to turn around and do that same
Oh,
thing.
okay, valid. You're right. You're right.
But you know who doesn't make me feel bad at all? Our guest tonight.
Oh,
Would you do the would you do the honor of introducing our fantastic guest for this evening?
yes. Tonight we have the amazing Leon Johnson, who is a fine art photographer who I love his work. And he's also an educator. So, ladies and gentlemen, I present Leon Johnson. Thank you for
Yeah.
joining us.
Da-da-da.
Dun, da, da, da. I like that.
Thank you
Thank you
so
for
much
the
for
wonderful introduction.
You're welcome. Thanks for being on the podcast with us.
Yeah, I'm excited.
One of the things that I'm really excited to get into is really to talk about more in depth about your photography itself. But for our audience at home, can you tell a little bit about how you got into photography? Kind of what are you doing now? Just a little bit of a bio about yourself.
Sure, I'm originally from Washington D.C., and I am currently in starting my third career, I think. I started out as a mechanical engineer,
Oh,
working
wow.
for the government and a private company for a while. I decided I wanted to do something different. I joined the military, and I've been a translator of Arabic for about 21 years.
That's
And
so
so
cool.
I'm currently in active duty military, and I'm retiring from the military this year. And so I think that's really pertinent because there are a lot of people, I think, definitely who maybe they think that they are that they're stuck in one career. But I mean, I definitely use my quote unquote off time to follow one of my passions, and which is photography. And how did I find this passion? I was at a conference. It was like a science fiction and fantasy convention, an East Coast one, Dragon Con.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's lots of cosplay and lots of great books and things like that. And so I had a friend who was a professional photographer, and he went away to do a photo shoot. And I was like, wow, I wonder what that is like. So the next month, I had a friend who said, hey, let's do a photo shoot. And we did a photo shoot. And that was in 2015. That was like October 2015. And from there, I kind of started out by photographing cosplay because, I knew that they were really interesting, visually interesting people. And also they're an interesting culture of people as well. I then kind of moved on to photographing portraits. And I think that in the beginning, like, once I decided I wanted to try to make a business out of it, I realized that most cosplayers have no money. They kind of keep their money and they use it to create their cosplays and to get to the next con. So lo and behold, I started doing my own photography and uh, getting into my style. I think that I've always been influenced by like popular culture, by art, by different things out there. And so I think what really drew me, and so I'm a kid of the 80s. So I'm thinking like, if you can think about like the old Clash of the Titans, Conan the Barbarian, Dragon Slayer, all great
Yeah.
movies. And all of them like had like some, had a damsel in distress wearing a white dress or something like that. So I think that, and also very recently, or at that time recently, the HBO series Rome was a great influence. And like, I saw that series and I loved the costumes and I loved like how the people looked, and I was like, wow, that's something that I would like to capture. Big challenge for that is that I didn't have any of the costumes that they had. Um, Pretty much people, I'm in the South, so people have like jeans and t-shirts or shorts and t-shirts in their closets. And I kind of started like collecting my own wardrobe so that I could shoot what I wanted to shoot. And yeah, I think it was kind of like from there, it was like, I wouldn't say that was all she wrote, but definitely that was the beginning.
Cool.
Okay, I just have to say what it never ceases to amaze me the kind of artists that we get on the show, and we ask like, oh, how did you get to be an artist? And they have this incredible backstory of just uh, what feels like a 180 shift.
All right.
I, for one, I would like to echo our comments here and say thank you for your service.
Okay.
Um,
Thank you.
Two, I would like to
Yeah.
say congratulations on retiring, and congratulations on finding a third career. That is phenomenal.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Congrats. And yay. Yeah.
Yay.
Yay. Yeah. I had no idea that you got started in cosplay. That's so cool.
Yeah, I got started in cosplay. I'm a big science fiction and fantasy nerd. I'm a nerd in many ways. I'm a language nerd. I think that part of my personality is learning about people and cultures, and so that drove me into become wanting to be a linguist and a translator, and an overall language nerd. But it also drove me into photography because I think that through photography we make connections with people, and we also have a chance. Yes, nerds unite. Uh, we we uh, we are able to connect with individual people, and I think that in many ways I live vicariously through the people who I photograph. And I think I'm somewhat empathic in the sense that um, many times photography is a vehicle for helping people through what some of the things that they may be going through in their lives. And so I love picking up a cause, and many times their challenges become my challenges, and I act as kind of like a Gandalf, to help them through some of the things that they are going through. Yes,
Yeah,
yes. Mhm. Sure. I think that every artist has a they're like writers. I mean, all of them are artists. But I think that each one has a story that they would like to tell. And, I admit, I think in my real life sometimes I'm somewhat of a sensationalist. And like I love like the drama of things. And so excuse me. So I think that my story that I tell about people involves femininity, um, very much perhaps what we see as vulnerability. Um, my work tends to have a softness to it, and I don't know. I think that one of the things I love to capture also is innocence and allure. Exactly. I love innocence and allure, and so I think that I've never photographed anyone with like anything with like blood, or I've never photographed or I've never created something where my subject appeared afraid, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that we all have a natural rhythm, and I think that when you choose an artist or anything, or choose work of any type, any creative work, then you have to look at the person's natural tendencies. What do they naturally gravitate to in their work? And I think that for me, I tend to gravitate towards uh, perhaps maybe innocence, vulnerability, maybe sensuality, portraits of women. That
uh,
makes any sense.
Yeah.
it does. Because it was one of the things that um, really when I started to look at some of your work, and you can check out a little bit of Leon's work at leonjohnsonphotography.org. Um, I was really stunned by some of these portraits. Um, really like they were just kind of jumping out of the off of the screen at me. Sorry, I'm kind of a little lost for words because I'm both looking at them and just like I'm in awe of them at the same time. I think the one that really caught me the most is the one of the, and I am not going to refer to this term correctly, so I'm going to just say a headscarf of some sort that looks to be like an amber color,
Okay.
who looks like she's praying, has a little bit of some necklaces on. It's such a layered sort of picture itself. And I think that's the one that really struck me the most for
Right.
just made you want to stare at her and go, what is she looking at?
Right.
So I think that you've captured a very layered sort of perspective of humanity all in one shot.
Well, that's very important that you recognize that. So I think that one, as far as artistically, one of my, I would say, inspirations have been what I would consider religious iconography. So think of if you go into the San Antonio Museum of Art, you're going
Mhm.
to see many paintings of the Madonna and Child of Jesus, things like that. You'll see tons of that. And during those times, like the best artists were employed very much by the Catholic Church,
Mhm.
and that's where you see a lot of their creativity coming out. And one of the things you mentioned about like what is she looking at, that is so important to me. Like when I'm working, is that it always has to feel real and plausible to me. Like, I always, whenever someone's looking in a direction, I don't just accept that they're looking in a direction. I ask myself, well, what are they looking at and why and what's their story? And so one of my mentors, he always preaches that a photo or an image has a foreground, a middle ground, and a background, and it tells a story. And so he has these elaborate sets usually, like, and there's a story in each one of those levels. But it took me a while, but I realized and I accept that my story really is just about the subject. My work, I would characterize it a little bit differently from other photographers because I would say that my work is very much more simple. I typically will have one subject or two subjects on a simple background. Um, I also tend to have them in what I would consider, I wouldn't necessarily say vintage, but I would definitely say a type of clothing that is simple. Like I don't, do modern clothing very much. If I do, it's not something that I advertise. Maybe for headshots or something. But I always try to I always try to use the clothing, the gestures and expressions, and of course the appearance to transport the subject and especially the viewer to a different time in a different place to make you feel like that person just came from a different place. And so I try to resist anything that uh, maybe detracts from that vision or from that maybe illusion in that sense. And so, you know, for example, there are a lot of there's a photographer and she's in Paris. She's a friend of mine, and she reproduces a lot of Renaissance era portraits. But then she'll like include something like an iPhone, or she'll include like the person's like the Mona Lisa, but she's eating a bag of popcorn. So I mean, it's like little small little quirks like that, and that's definitely like her style. Uh, but I think that I really try to make you feel like this is a painting from a painter many years dead.
And I was going to say that it definitely reminded me a lot of the works of like Rembrandt or Vermeer, where you get this like central focus on the subject itself,
Right.
and then the rest of it is kind of like a muted or somewhat dark sort of background to it, and
Absolutely.
it's a very timeless look to it.
Yeah, they have. a term, and it's in Italian. It's called chiaroscuro, which is
Mhm.
basically like, light coming out of darkness. And so there's a German guy, and I can't remember his name, but he wrote a book and he talked about how different contrasts uh, capture our vision. And so, he talks about shapes and directions and things like that, and why those things capture our like attention. But also, we can think of the contrast between lightness and darkness. So chiaroscuro is like, a person who is well lit on a darker background. And so, like, like I said, I'm Mr. Simplicity here. So like, like I always have patterns. It's either a dark person on a bright background, or a brighter person on a darker background. And that pattern follows itself, I think, throughout my work. So definitely, like, I definitely am consciously thinking about, honestly, I think it's more subconscious now. um I always will have a subject that I feel is kind of stands out from the background. That's very important. You don't want someone who just like feels like part of the background, unless that's your intention, of course. um but yeah.
I fully agree. You said kind of the anachronistic things, just kind of including those. There is a YouTuber, and I cannot think of her name at the moment, but she did a recreation of this incredible Baroque dress,
Okay.
and she wanted to have it photographed to mirror a Baroque painting.
Hmm.
Woman sitting in the library holding like a journal of some sort. Um, but she also talked with the photographer and wanted to modernize it a little bit. So in place of the journal, they gave her an iPhone. She's has like her headphones wrapped around her neck. So you have this elaborately dressed with the full like powdered wig and everything, and holding a bunch of anachronistic things.
Right, right.
So timeless in a different sense.
Right. And I think, I mean, there are a number of photographers who have what I would consider like a similar like editing style, but everything that I could look at their work and look at my work, and I think that everything is so different. One of my friends, Barbara Cardinale McFerrin, she does amazing work, but like I think that her work, for example, tends to focus on like ballerinas and maybe like young adults. Also, like it's not apparent in the photo behind me, but also the eyes and the connection is a really large part of what I look for in a photo. I'm really drawn to the eyes. You will rarely see much of my work where the person's, at least their face, is not visible. um I think each one of us, like, maybe in a photo session, maybe I may take 1,000 photos. Who knows? It's digital, so who cares?
Right.
But so, don't judge me. But definitely that editing process, we exert ourselves and our own creativity on so many different levels of our process. First of all, just like in the planning and the direction of the scene, and the subject. But then also when we are editing and culling our images, like, I just photographed a mom, and maybe I think with her I took about 500 images. And so, of those 500, I probably will narrow them down to about 50 or 75 images for her to see. But what will those 50 or 75 be? Those 50 or 75 will be the images that speak to me, and have what I consider impact. And very early on, I remember one of my mentors, she told me that, first of all, in any photo is impact. And so for me, that means, like, are they connecting with you? Can you see their face? Can you see their eyes? Is there an emotional response to whatever they're doing? And that for me is impact. And so, uh, so in a way, even though she's choosing photos that she loves, she's still choosing photos amongst the ones that at least I say, okay, these are okay. So,
And Emily, I think this is more a question for you because I don't ever think that you've asked, and um, or I don't think I've ever asked you, how do
Mhm.
you whittle? Yeah, how do you whittle down? Like when you go from like all of these pictures that you've taken in a photo shoot,
Mm-hmm.
how do you consolidate them down to a select few?
I use a sword. I use a sword. And then once I get it down to like a 50 or 75, like Leon said, then I take out my dagger and take care of the rest.
Yeah.
No, it's kind of like Leon said. If it doesn't speak to me, it goes away. And there's other imperfections that get called out too. You get a little blurry, or it someone was blinking, things like that.
Right.
They go away instantly because those are not things you want. But and it also depends on the photo shoot. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's a camera setting that I took the first 50 photos with and I was like, no, I came up with something better along the way, because
Yeah.
I believe at least for me, the first half hour of shooting with someone new, especially if someone isn't normally a model, sometimes it's just like icebreaker time, where
Yes.
yeah, they're kind of getting used to it. So a lot of the first half hour of shots I take are garbage, and it's not anyone's fault. It's just they're still warming up, and sometimes I am too. So that's how I hope that
We,
answered your question.
there. Someone told me that the first 40 images are crap,
Yeah.
and I never tell my clients that, but I kind of plan that into it. Typically, even before I photograph someone, I have an in-person consult with them where we flip through different inspirations. We flip through some of my work, and it gives me an idea, at least, of like what that person would like for their photos. I mean, definitely you have different inspirations, but then also, maybe some people are conservative, some people are not, and so people are not open books. So
Right.
you don't, especially with client, a lot of my work is client based. And so people don't always, one, they don't always know what they want. And that's something that I'm comfortable with because that's probably the norm. But also, they are not always forthcoming with, like, well, I'd really like to try this. And so it's my job in that consultation to really ferret that out, to really understand what do they want their photos, what do they want their photos to say about them? Because for me, it very much is, I think that I look at every shoot in a way emotionally, except headshots, but but definitely, like with my work that where I'm creating something that I consider to be art. um, I wanted to say something about that person because I want it to last, and I wanted to endure, maybe generations. I want maybe that person's children and their children's children to look at it and say, I wonder what she's thinking, or I wonder who she was. And that's so important because I think that, like, for me, if you've seen the Disney movie Coco, um, that movie is about, like, that's like, so it's the day of celebrating the Mexican Day of the Dead, Dios de los Muertos.
Hmm.
And some Spanish person said, Leon, you said that all wrong. But anyway, so uh, the concept is that you continue to live in another world as long as people remember you. And so very often, like for me, I have my mother's grandmother. I don't remember her. Like, I remember her, but I only remember her through the stories that my mother gave me of her. But I guarantee you, when I pass on, those stories will die with me because we don't have a visual reference of her. I don't have any pictures of her. And so for many people, I take it as kind of like my commission to create a portrait of them that will speak to generations. And I think that as long as you have a picture of yourself, people can look at that picture and they'll wonder about you. They'll ask themselves questions about you. They'll wonder who you are, and they'll infer things from that photo as well. And I just think of it like as an image, because a lot of my things are styled like paintings.
Right. Yeah. Very painterly. I love that about your work.
Thank you.
Sandra in the chat said, well, first of all, Tatiana joined us, and thank you for coming and being with us again.
Thanks, ladies.
Yeah, we interviewed Tatiana. She makes fairy wings. So
Wow.
yeah, you'll have to check out that interview at some point too. Um, Sandra said, "Are your photographs mainly in studio, or do you do location shoots or nature shots?" Shoots.
So I have a beautiful garden in my backyard.
Oh,
I can't take all the credit for it, but you know what? I'm owning it nevertheless. And I do take garden photos sometimes. Actually started out outdoors, and what uh, what kind of forced me indoors was like one living in San Antonio. San Antonio. I'm now in Augusta, Georgia, but San Antonio is on hell's doorstep about 9 months out of the year, and so you really don't want to be outside. And there are a lot of people who love outdoors, but just imagine every day of the summer, and by summer I mean like April through like November. It's like 90 and 100 degrees out if you're lucky, and so it's like you get out of your car. Your makeup is melting. You got bugs around you. The kids are hot and they don't want to be there. I mean that, and then it's always a recipe for disaster. I mean, I'm really serious about my work, and so it's like when I'm photographing outdoors, it's like I'm looking at the time that the sun is setting, and I'm telling people to be here. I'm looking at the direction, and the sun is going to filter through those trees over there, and we're going to get that photo. And so that's very much me. And so when I have people who are up to that caliber of like, kind of involvement, then yeah, by all means, yeah, I shoot outdoors as well. But, like I said, I do have a beautiful garden in my backyard, and I've actually done family photos as well as individual portraits out there.
okay.
And it's cool because I can just like, okay, now let's walk out my back door and voila, we're in the beautiful garden. So that's nice.
That is wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I would just like to comment and say, as a former Texan, I can confirm San Antonio is at hell's doorstep, and so is West Texas, but that's more like in the
Yes.
armpit area.
Yeah.
The
It's
armpit area.
I'm not
armpit of
even
Texas.
kidding. It's
Yeah.
dry, it's flaky, it's a whole bunch of just
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Nice.
excuse me, in Texas, the outdoor images that I love to shoot are usually like in Castroville, which is like suburb of San Antonio, but it's in the Medina Lake. I mean the Medina River. And so, like I said, I really started out with girls in white dresses, or women in white dresses, and so I really love photographing like women in white dresses near a river and flowing water. I mean, that's just amazing for me. Or even better, take fabric and drape it around her, and then it becomes just something again from another time.
And sometimes timeless too.
Timeless,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. I want people to look at it and say, well, not really be able to readily say what time period that's from.
Right. Right. Tatiana said, "I love the idea of creating multi-generational photography."
Yes, yes. I
And
mean, go ahead.
oh no, sorry.
No, I'm just saying, I love it too. I wish it a lot of, and one of the things that I've started like a little thing that says bodies are beautiful, and I'm really encouraging people of all ages and generations to kind of celebrate who and what they are right now versus like, a lot of times as we get into our 30s and 40s, a lot of people, they spend their time wishing that they were 20 again. But I mean, we have to move on, and we also have to look at where we are right now and not just think of our lives in the context of who we were when we were 20 or 18, and we have to move past that.
Right. Archer, who is our moderator, said, "I have a picture of my grandfather playing cards with his friends when he was a teenager, and it
Yeah,
tells me so much about who he was, and not just
absolutely.
the old person I knew when I was a kid."
Yeah, absolutely. And so I try to do that with people as well. And so I think that people choose me when they choose me as an artist. They choose me because of my vision. They choose me because of my inspirations. And I try to share those inspirations with them all the time. I mean, I have some favorites, like, of course, like I love like the painters Matisse, Degas. There's a painter called Chasterio. So while I was in San Antonio, I did a Spanish painters series.
Okay.
And I did that because one, I love Spanish painters. And so then also, of course, San Antonio has a very large and diverse community, but a lot of them are Latin as well. I love Matisse. And so what I did was I looked at all of these paintings of Spanish painters or people of Hispanic origin. And I said, well, what are the components that I want to draw out of a paint of some of their paintings? And so, in many cases, it was the styling, like the type of dress that they're wearing, the colors, a lot of red, a lot of black, a lot of flamboyance. I also incorporated like red carnations in the hair. And so I had a 13 and 15-year-old sisters, and I created for them, I think, four portraits, two together and two
Stunned
separate.
by some of these
And
portraits.
they loved them. I mean, the 15-year-old, she says that she told me beforehand that she hates herself in portraits. But now their mom has like, four very special portraits of them uh, that will, I think that they will always be able to look back and say, wow, we are amazing and we are beautiful in that. And now they are art. They're immortalized in, a photo that looks like a painting.
That's awesome.
And I love that you said that they can look back at it and go, "Wow, I was gorgeous."
Right.
Um, so one of
Like,
the
hey, that's
things
me.
Yeah.
that's me. I'm pretty.
Yes.
I That's one of the things that I have to say both to Emily and to you is that I think you both do an amazing job of that, of like finding something that's gorgeous about the person that you're
Absolutely.
photographing, and then just bring that out. Because I don't often think that people give themselves enough credit of how gorgeous they actually are.
You,
So,
you Trey, are you married?
no, but I am
Okay.
in love.
So I can guarantee you that that, but you're wise beyond your years if you know that, because spouses, include my wife, like if I tell her like, wow, you're beautiful, she said, well, you have to say that. So they really discount the opinion of their loved ones. And so one of the things that I say is that I help people see the beauty that everyone else is telling them is there, but they can't always see. Because, maybe a woman is not going to take the word of her husband or her kids because she thinks like, okay, they're biased, they live with me. But then it's like, if she's when she sees herself in this beautiful portrait, that's something that, like, I think that seeing is believing. And so then she finally says, okay, now I see what you guys were talking about. So I love doing that for people. I mean, and that again goes along with part of my personality of wanting to be of service to people. And in many ways my service is through photography and art.
That is incredible. And that must make you feel good when they say something like that too.
It makes me feel great. I just came back from Las Vegas, and you probably hear it in my voice a little bit, but yeah. But I was in Las Vegas for a photographers conference. It's like a trade show. But
Hmm.
there's a girl who I kind of like had corresponded with her probably for the last like 6 years, and we were just like Facebook friends. And I think she was a model, and then she had like two kids. And so she told me recently, like a year ago, that like how she had stopped modeling because she was a little bit less secure with her body because her body changed, between no kids and then two kids later. And so when she found out I was coming to Las Vegas, she booked a shoot with me, and we did these images, and she loved them. I mean, but what really was beautiful to me is that she saw, instead of seeing herself as like, oh wow, look at those rolls or look at that extra weight, she saw the beautiful curves that she had, and she saw herself as a thing of beauty, and not in a critical way. So I know a lot, as a photographer, I know a lot of women, they don't like their arms and they don't like the rolls. But then when it's like when they can see those rolls like on a statue or of Aphrodite or Venus, or something Roman or Greek inspired, and then see themselves, and they say, wow, I look just like that. It's like then that becomes like a thing of beauty and not like a source of something for them to criticize themselves about. And I think it's a source of pride too, because it's like once you see yourself and your potential, I think that it really helps you just like stand a little taller and like walk with your chest out a little bit.
Yeah. Was there a moment or a certain photo shoot, or was there some kind of, I guess moment is the word I'm looking for, that happened for you when changed from changed from cosplay photography to this magnificence? Was there a moment where it clicked for you and you were like, yes, this is what I need to be doing?
Was there a moment? I don't know if there was any aha moment.
Okay.
So I think that I started out kind of doing my own thing. Then, like for a while, I was doing Sue Bryce education, and I know that. Well, I can definitely say that Sue has had, and Sue is a friend of mine, and I can definitely say that she gave me the confidence to be myself, and that's a huge thing. Um, so many artists out here. So why do people become photographers? I heard a joke over the weekend. So I hear that, like, okay, all these people who are photographers. This was by Gary Hughes, and I'm gonna mess this joke up. But he says all these photographers, they chose photography because maybe they're either a realtor in training, or like they're going to be a realtor, or they used to be a realtor. And it seems like many times people choose photography and being a realtor as like quote unquote maybe like easy or accessible jobs. And so many times people, when they are looking at like photography in general, they want a means to the end. They want, like, okay, I just want to be able to take this portrait and take it just like this. So they just want to create something just like someone else. But I think that, like, and so in other words, so there's no creativity in it. But it is important, definitely to have both balance within, the creative side, but also the business side. Uh, but I think that Sue Bryce, one of the things that she kind of gave me the confidence to do is that, like, your style doesn't have to match everyone else's. You can be unique with your work, and you can be unique in your approach, and people will connect and identify with that. You'll find your tribe. I think that my tribe and the people who really come to me are people who are romantic. They see themselves romantically, but they haven't lately seen themselves romantically. And so I think that, like, people come to me sometimes to help them get the groove back in a way, and to be able to once again fall in love with the person that they are and that they've become. And I think that my ideal clients, they love art. They're romantic people. They are, in a way, maybe a little bit idealistic, and they see the good in people, because that's what I do. I think that I see the best in people, and I think that most people are good intentioned, and I think that's what I choose to see in people as well. And I think that that bleeds into my art as well, in the sense that I think that I see a sort of beauty in everyone, and through art, through the work that I do with them, I'm showing them the beauty that I see, and it's believable. It's believable.
I think so.
So
Yeah.
Tatiana asked, "Do you ever do personal projects? And if so, do you prefer personal projects over client work?" So that's a great question. So I'll tell you my honest and personal opinion. Um, I do both. I mean, a lot. To be honest, all of my work is a personal project, or at least it started that way. Um, because I firmly believe that you have to show people what you want them to buy. And as an artist, I started creating the beautiful work that I see, and then, like, when I create it, then someone comes to me and says, "Wow, like, I want a photo like that, or I want to create something like that." And many times people come to me with the weird, not really weird ones, but like maybe the things that they thought were not doable before. I had one girl, her grandmother posed for a painting many years ago. She was reclining, like, on a couch, and she says, "Hey, I want to do something like that." So we recreated that, and in the painterly style. And so that was, that's like an amazing portrait of her, that, she's following a tradition of her grandmother. So with my personal work, I think that I tend to I think that I'm more a little bit more dogmatic about, like, maybe the content. What I realize is that we all have something that we want, even our subjects. So, like, even sometimes, like, I do a lot of personal work and with people who I've worked with locally, and just like people from all over. Typically, I think people who choose to do personal work with me are people who I think already love my style. They see paintings and the same art, and they're inspired by them, and they love them, and they see them in a romantic way. And I think that those people rightly choose the artist based upon their work. You wouldn't. I don't think that anybody sees my work and says, "Wow, I bet that guy could really photograph a house." That's probably not happening. Um, but if I will for like 10 grand, so I'll photograph the
Oh
heck
yeah,
out of
why not?
that.
Why not?
So, but I think we have to choose the tool for the job, definitely. And so with my personal work, I tend to recreate paintings. I tend to do things that, like, I'm inspired by, and it's usually very. I probably have sort of an attention deficit, in that, like, I get inspired by something and I want to create it right now. So there are a few people who are my so-called right now people, who I can call up and say, "Hey, let's recreate this." And yeah, those are really important to me, because ultimately the right now people, they are people who then I help to inspire the masses who see my work and then say, "Wow, I've never thought of that. I didn't know that something like that could exist. I think I want something like that for me." You know.
I I can relate to that. I want to do it right now. That's
So the
yeah.
so the portrait behind me, you can't see it. There's a girl. She has on kind of like a cropped shirt, and it's probably comes above the bust line, but, like, you could see she has bare shoulders,
Hmm.
bare décolletage, the collarbones, the neck, a little bit of cleavage, and she also has, like, kind of a scarf on her head. Now, I talked a little bit about, maybe transforming and transporting the viewer, but also, like, having it be believable. So just a little bit of insight. Uh, the the top that she's wearing is actually from that company Shein, the Chinese
Oh
company.
yeah.
Yeah, and so the the scarf that she's wearing on her head, that looked very Dutch to me. That is actually, like, I think they call it like a flour sack or something like that.
Yeah.
It's basically something that you could take and fold into a diaper. It's like a cotton square, and so I
Hmm.
just folded it and I tied it underneath her hair, and then we part her hair down the middle, and voila, it's like, it feels like it's coming out of a painting.
Yeah.
And that even that part down the middle, that's something that you'll see a lot in the times, in those times of, like, those paintings, like, from the late 1800s. So it's like you have to take components from the art and to help make it believable.
I would say that's very timeless, though. I love that one in particular that you're describing.
Hmm.
Do you name your portraits at all? Like, especially your personal projects? Do they end up with names or?
Sometimes, and it's very much like whatever inspires me at the moment.
Okay.
I used to write poetry, and I'll say I don't write poetry recently, but definitely that artistic, like, whatever comes to mind, that spark is still there. And I love, like, like, the way that, like, people like Degas, how they would entitle their paintings, like, a girl at the bath type of
Yeah.
thing. I love that kind of thing. And like, it's probably, when people think about a lot of the portraits that we see from that period, those periods, a lot of them are not realistic. I mean, some of them are like, okay, oh, a girl wanders into a forest and falls asleep nude in the forest, and some angel comes down. I mean, that's not really realistic, but I still think it's very romantic. And so I think that the people who can identify with that, they definitely are romantics, and not as much concerned with maybe, like, reality in that sense. Um, I do sometimes name the portraits, but I feel like they all have their own spirit to them, especially the stuff that I've created, that's really a part of my personal work. Uh, my personal work sometimes, but not always, like, or I would say that what I do for clients is most times inspired by personal work. It's tough to, um, many times I think clients come with, for lack of a better word, an agenda. They want, this type of portrait or that type of portrait. But sometimes I will get clients who say, Leon, I want to give you artistic freedom and just, take me and photograph me as you will, like, kind of create with me whatever you see. And that's usually something where, like, I will do something a little bit more creative, versus just like, creating something based upon something that I've done before. But it takes a lot. I mean, to be honest, that takes a lot of trust on both sides. You can imagine, like, how can you as a woman, or how does a woman, take a person, an artist, and say, do with me as you will? I mean, not in any weird way or anything, but you're kind of you're kind of exposing yourself to their creativity, and because you never know what if you feel like you have a bad side and they say, I want to photograph that side of your face,
Right.
or what if many people have insecurities about. And so for me, I'm one of those people that, when I find the insecurities, I love to photograph them and create with them. It's like, oh, I don't like my stomach because I had like a C-section. Like, yes, I found one, or I have this scar, and I'm like, yes. I love to find the insecurities and help people love them. To be honest, um,
Wow.
do I name them? Yeah, sometimes I name them, and sometimes I have some really, like, what I would consider, creative work and soulful work. Um, yeah.
The,
Oh, go ahead, Trey.
oh no. There have been many times that I have been the person that's just like filling in as a model.
Hmm.
Not many times, because I will admit no, I am no model.
It's the
Did you just
chaps
hear
that do
anything Leon said?
I'm where. Hello, and this is a PSA from the Modern Romantic. We do believe here in mental health services, and we do recommend that you speak to a therapist. I'm currently going through therapy, so there are a lot of layers to work with here. Um,
But Trey, you put on a loincloth and that changes everything.
there ain't no way in hell's handbasket that I'm ever putting on a loincloth.
Right. Yeah.
Wait. On our way to Scotland, where we're going to
Uh-huh.
go see Scott Mitchell, who's going to give you the Diego the dinosaur tattoo. We're going to
Uh-huh.
fly through Atlanta anyway, right? So I think that on our way through Atlanta, we ought to stop at Leon's.
Emily, I feel like this is a setup to like make the loincloth happen, and that's just no.
Emily's got a long game.
Yeah, see, like, I mean, you just heard what. Have you heard anything Leon said? You look great. It'll be fine.
But just like Trey has those feelings, like, that of maybe they're in a way like inadequacy, or the common, I guess, hurdles that I see: inadequacy, feelings of inadequacy, feelings of, well, I'm not going to be beautiful in this photo, or like, I can't take a good photo. And I always love that challenge. I'm like, hold my beer, like, I love for people to challenge me that, like, they can't take great photos. I love just jumping all into that. I'm a contrarian. I love underdog stories. And so I'm like, let's do it. But, those are common. And, um, I think that people really feed off of my passion. And Sandra asked, how do you put a client at ease if they're appearing too stiff for the shoot? To be honest, it is through connection. Like, so I say that I meet with people. I usually meet with people for about an hour to kind of, to talk about their shoot beforehand. This is like days or weeks before their shoot, before their session, and I will talk to them. We nail down the concepts that we're doing. I pull out the garments that and say, "Hey, look at this garment. This is what you're going to be wearing." We go down into the details, like even like some of the garments, like if they're white, we talk about undergarments because you don't want to wear those polka dot granny panties underneath the white dress, right? And so we get into that level of detail. So on one level, Sandra, I try to make sure that each one who comes into my studio, they're like super prepared. They know exactly what they're gonna encounter. They're in the place that they're gonna be photographed. They know that my makeup and hairstylist is gonna be there, making them look amazing. I also, if you haven't figured it out, I'm a talker. So I really talk to people, and I always will add about 30 minutes of talk time for me, because I want to know who people are. I want to know, about their kids. What are some of the things that inspire them? What do they love? What do they hate? Who are they? I mean, these are all things that I want to know about that person so that, when they come in for their session, we can kind of connect. I want to know about what kind of music they like, what kind of music they hate. I always play music during my sessions. Many times it is a mix of like stuff that I love. It's Arabic music. It's music that's in Kurdish. I have there's a guy. His name is Rashid Taha. He's an Algerian, and he has like a cover for Rock the Casbah, but it's in Arabic. It's in Algerian Arabic. And so I love like things that play different instruments and feel in a way exotic because I think that music allows you to kind of feel like you're in a different place in a different time. And I love to encourage people to allow their creativity to come out in like a safe space. And that's tough. It's tough. I'm a guy, so it's like a woman could choose any other woman to do this with, but I think that they feed and they believe in my passion and my vision. And I mean, and it requires a lot of trust from them. And also, like, I think that any artist, it requires a lot of trust from me as well. The reason I say that is that we all, like, when you are sharing your art with people, you are sharing a maybe part of your subconscious, a part of yourself that you don't share with most people. We all have an inside voice that, when we see things, we says, "Oh man, that's ugly," or it says stuff that we don't share in public. And I think that art is one of those things. It's one of those inner emotions that it comes from our subconscious. It's what we love. We're pouring a little bit of our love, our creativity, and who we are into our work. And so imagine wanting to like just put that in front of the world, and they say, "Oh, that's stupid," or that's ugly," or "I don't like that. How about you put like a jean skirt over that?" Like, I mean, there's so many different things, and so it requires a trust from me as an artist to share, what my vision is with that person. And I take the chance of them ridiculing it, of criticizing it. So, I think that there definitely is a vulnerability on both sides because my subjects, I think that when they share their insecurities with me, they're definitely being vulnerable. But we understand we have a common goal of making them look and feel amazing and capturing that in a portrait, you know. And, it's something that whenever they look back, they can look at that portrait on their wall or in their album and say, "Wow, I look amazing." And it looks like them. It doesn't look like anybody else. Like, it's part of the simplicity for me is that all of these people, they look like themselves. They don't look like other people in their photos. So there's not like, that feeling like, "Oh, well, I look good because of the makeup." The makeup is really, it's very minimal, it's very natural, and they're all going to look like themselves in the end, just like, as if they had like, full 24 hours of sleep and, you know, added some moisturizer and things to their skin. So,
Well, then, Leon, you officially have a challenge. I would book a session with you.
oh man.
Um, I would book a session with you. And if you can make me love the way that I look in that photo,
Yeah.
I will eat my words and
Oh
then
man,
some.
get ready to eat some crow, man.
Love it.
I love it. I honestly love what I do. I love what I do, and really, it really is just like an elaborate dress up game. It's like because you're just taking the visions and the things like, wow, wouldn't it be great to create that? And I actually get to do that. I actually get to do that with people, and then other people see it and they're like, hey, Leon, here's a lot of money to do that. So it's like, wow, yes. So I mean, I'm definitely living the dream and being able to kind of create to be a to kind of engage my creativity, and then also people pay me for it, so that's really the dream.
Yeah. Um, so to backtrack in the chat a little bit, Archer said loincloth is one step on the way to a great kilt. And
Yes.
Sandra said, "Wish we were closer. You sound fabulous. My daughter's graduation photo shoot was so different from that, and she was stiff throughout the session."
Yeah, I mean, I see that. Like, I actually have a friend, he's an old army buddy of mine, and his daughter was 17 turning 18. She's a senior, and I did a session for her. Now, I think that for her, definitely uh, she wanted something a little bit different. And I say bravo to her parents, with wanting to have photos of her. I think that really I try with seniors. I think that people are stiff when they feel like they're being subjective to these photos. Like, oh my gosh, my mom wants photos, so I guess I have to do it. So I really try to find out like something. I try to bring them into my passion. I try to show them my work and find their interest and see what, like, wow, would you like to see yourself that way? And of course, with seniors, of course, it has to be something age appropriate. But like, definitely, like, we created some amazing photos of her. Even the girl like behind me in this portrait, at the time of her portrait, I think she was like 18 or 19. So to be able to look back and to say at any time in your life that, wow, mom was beautiful. I mean, I think that's amazing. And I love taking women in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s and creating beautiful portraits with them, because I see them as beautiful too, but they don't always see that in themselves. So we all have our challenges.
There's a photographer that I once followed on a previous TikTok account, and I cannot find them for the life of me. But they would do what they called goddess shoots,
Yes.
where and they were contacted by a woman in their like 60s, and I don't quite remember if it was their own grandmother or like unbeknownst to her, she just kind of booked a shoot with her.
Hmm.
Point being is that on the day of the shoot, showed up, had a lot of feelings of inadequacy and that sort of thing, and wound up taking some of the most stunning pictures of a close to 80-year-old that I think that I have ever seen. And
Yeah.
very, very simple, standing out in the middle of a cornfield, wearing like a sundress of some sort, and just looked incredible.
Hmm.
So, thank you for making me think of that memory because, yeah, we need more things like that.
Right.
And if she can do it, you can too, Trey.
Yeah.
And
and
what?
and like, I love you, but also the loincloth's not going to happen. Stop.
Credence said, Trey's Zan in a, like Tarzan, Treyzan in a loincloth. Okay, you
No.
don't have to loincloth it. I'm not going to push that. You do what you're comfortable with. I was just saying, like, I think you could do a photo shoot and it would be wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
not pushing
anybody
it.
could, and I think that anybody can create something. And guys, I think they don't always. I am a guy, so but like I think that we don't always see ourselves in the same way. And one of the things that I feel is that guys don't always. We are not as maybe self conscious in the sense that I think that for many women, a lot of their identity is tied into their how they see themselves and how they view their appearance. And so like as a guy, like we generally, maybe we don't care. And even honestly, the way that we photograph guys is different. When people edit guys, instead of removing the wrinkles and what I would consider softening them, people, they add clarity, which makes them look more distinct and rough. And so it's a polar opposite to what and how we portray women, I think, in our work. And I love doing kind of like androgynous things as well, where maybe you take a girl and like you're like I've done a session with her in like a blazer and a top hat, and I love doing things like that, and then I also will also edit it in the same way, so it's like it's very androgynous in that sense.
I love that.
Cool. Yeah.
So you also are an educator. You told me before about some, I'm going to probably use the wrong word, but conferences or conventions that you've,
Right.
can you tell me a little bit about that?
I think it all stems from my passion for art. And so there are a lot of people. I am an educator in the sense that, I have a sponsor. I'm an ambassador for Stellar Pro Lights, and they are a constant light. And so, believe it or not, the light that's on me right now is one of their lights. It's both a photography and video light, and it's cool because it's flickerless. So that's important with video. You don't have that flicker. Um, I think that a lot of people, maybe they don't see themselves as quite being artistic, and a lot of times they need help, maybe even some in some ways validation to help them take that first step. I think that I needed it, and Sue Bryce is someone who gave me that confidence to take that first step and to believe in myself as an artist and to do something that was a little bit different. And so I think that a lot. So I'm an educator both with like the light on the lighting side and people who are getting into photography and learning how light will make a situation different, versus different types of moods. But also, I have a course which is teaching like my painterly editing style, and in that one, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of there's a photographer, her name is Irene Rudnick. She's one of like my favorite photographers. She's in Calgary, and she's the Canon, I think they call them like, Canon person of light or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know what they call them. But she's an amazing photographer, very feminine, mostly outdoor images of women. And so I think why did I even not mention that? Um, what was your question again,
You
Emily?
were
There's
talking about teaching.
Okay, teaching. Voila. So I think that my work and her work, we definitely create, we share that femininity and sensuality and softness. But then also, like, a lot of people want to learn like my editing style. Like, what am I doing technically to take a portrait of a person and then creating skin tones and tones in the background that then make it look and feel like a painting. And
Right.
that's something that I've teaching. And so I mentioned Irene because she was actually one of my subjects for the images that I edited in my course. So I take 3 images of 3 different people and I edit them from beginning to end and talk about the why. Why did I choose this background? Why did I choose this garment? What am I thinking as I'm going through and editing this? And so I think that that's always important because, you know, disclaimer, like with my work, it's never just I do X, Y, and Z, and then I'm at the end. It's always a process by which you're looking at things, you know, you're looking at everything and you're making judgments, artistic judgments, like, I need a little bit more of this color in the skin, or I need a little bit more of that. And you're doing that as you go. So it's nigh impossible for me to try to, like, when I'm editing, if I'm editing like multiple images and I have to do them the same way, I tell people ahead of time that it's very likely that they're not all going to look the same. If I want them to look the same, I really do have to edit like all 3 or all 4 at the same time.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any like big dream projects you'd like to work on, or If
Oh, that's a big question. And,
yeah,
it's really, I mean, that's an interesting question. I'm always trying to figure out what are my next dreams and there's so many paintings and things like that that I love to create. I just met in Las Vegas a Australian, she's an Iranian Australian photographer,
wow,
and her name is Farouk Yavari, and it's like FOROUGH space Yavari. That's like YAVARI, I believe.
okay,
And she's won like this photographic competition as a grandmaster many times. But she is one of those people that really speaks in her work about like social injustices. She talks about women's rights. Being from Iran, she has a lot to talk about. But I love her. I love her creativity. I love her passion for her work. And so I've corresponded with her, even though she's in Australia. Yay for the internet.
yeah.
Um, I've corresponded. I mean, yeah, I didn't write snail mail. That's we've been corresponding by snail mail for many years.
I would.
That was
That's so romantic of you.
yeah. But it was great to meet her and just to hear a little bit about what she does, and like some of her projects she'll photograph them and they might take 6 months to a year to kind of actually go from her photographing it to a final product. And there's so much thought into it. I'm more of that 80% solution type of person who wants to, I see an image, I see an inspiration, and I want to create it. There are a lot of things that I still, you know, have in my mind. Like, so I have a lot of the paintings like by Matisse, by Amadeo Modigliani, by um, Gustav Klimt. I have a book of drawings by Gustav Klimt, and so sometimes I love creating a series because it's something that people can identify with. So I remember there was someone else in the who loved Matisse, and so if you love his work, and wow, wouldn't that be a great opportunity to see yourself in something that's inspired by his work? And so I guess in a lot of ways, I'm still taking inspiration from other great artists, and then I sprinkle some of me in there. I sprinkle some of my creativity and maybe something that makes me a little bit different in there. So your question was, do I have a big project?
Well, or
I
any
have,
dream projects that you.
yeah, I have lots of ideas. Like, I mean, of course, Paris is my favorite city. I would do anything in Paris, and it'll be a dream. Like, I
Yeah.
love Paris, but I've told myself that I want to do more composite work. Uh, and so right now, like some of the things that I'm proud of right now are what I consider complex scenes. And so what to I've done a few of these lately, and it's like you see this easel behind me. So I love, like, for example, the scene from Titanic, like the paint me as one of your French girls.
Yeah.
And so what I did was, like, I actually had a model, and I had her as the subject. I also had her as the artist, composited in as the artist. And she had a blank canvas, but the canvas was actually a charcoal drawing of her. So she kind of appeared in the image three times, and I mean,
Oh.
and so I mean, for me, it was just like amazing when I'm able to realize something that I've seen before, or to have that, because that's really like almost like art imitating life. And so I feel, it's very rare for you to see the artist in, like, physically in the work. And I thought it was a special thing to be able to include an artist in there, because then it's like you are kind of like from the viewpoint of a third person, like watching this artistic process happen. So that's almost like an art imitating life type of thing. I'm able to, capture, like, maybe from that, that relationship between the artist and the subject, and the magic that happened, between the two of them. So that's a theme. So I think that I have those themes in mind versus, like, like one, like, very discernible and detailed big project.
Okay. And then, do you have any advice for anybody who wants to start out? Anybody who wants to be
Yes.
Leon Johnson.
First, you got to change your name, Leon. So if you're just starting out, I'd say that definitely I'm a very prolific photographer. I photograph people like every week,
Hmm.
like literally like every week I'm out photographing someone. I say that go out there and make mistakes. Go out there and do things wrong because you'll learn from it. You'll learn something. Maybe you won't learn. Maybe you won't achieve the look that you were looking for, but you'll learn something each time. I say go out there, try things that you haven't done, have a, have objectives. Look at things from different perspectives. Like should I photograph this from a high angle or from a low angle, from the right side or from the left side? What if I change the light to the opposite side? Do things unconventionally. I'm a firm believer that we learn more from experience than sometimes we do from instruction. So many times when I'm coaching and mentoring people, I am teaching them how to be a scientist. Like I said, I started out as an engineer. So I'm teaching them how to conduct an experiment, how to make observations and to learn from what they are doing as they go along. Someone remarked to me, well, Leon, you're telling like all your secrets here. And I'm like, I don't have any secrets. I do have secrets, but but they're not in my work. It's like I think that like people will take the tools that I teach and the methods, and they'll go and produce what they love. Like there are some people who now have taken my work and applied it to dogs, to kids, to to whatever, to horses, and so I think that that's great because then it's like I'm inspiring them, but also giving them the confidence to go out there and do what they love and to make mistakes. So if I were to give anyone advice, I would say follow your heart, do what you love, and let your heart kind of guide you what you as far as your passion, because people will identify much more with your passion than they will just with technical ability. People hire people who they know, like, and trust. And so that trust will come. And someone asked about how do you get people to feel more comfortable? It's because they see the passion I have for my work, and they see how determined I am to create beautiful portraits of them. And so, who can disagree with that?
Right. The results speak.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I I think it's a very common thing, and multiple photographers that we've had on the podcast have all said, a similar concept of like you're giving away your secrets. And Emily, I think you commented on it that you know there are some people who want to guard the secrets, but those who help others grow and are not gatekeeping certain
Right.
secrets and are very open about that foster a better sense of community with that. And I
Absolutely.
think that is incredible.
And it's
Um,
not natural. It's not, I think it's very natural to want to be, like, I guess, possessive and maybe a little bit territorial about your skills. And so definitely I think that the instincts as an educator are going to be different from your instincts as maybe as an artist. Not art. Most I don't think that artist and educator are synonymous. Many times, like, I have a friend who is getting his work in the galleries, and very much like, some of the advice has been given is like, don't show your stuff, don't show the world your work, so it has to be the rarity of your work that we have to see in the gallery, not like, oh, we don't want it to be common.
mhm.
And so really as an educator, you are really sharing your passion with people. You're sharing what you've learned, what you from your experiments, from your time doing something. And it's very different from maybe the artist who wants to, maybe protect their work from, I honestly, I'm one of those people that don't believe that anybody can imitate you.
Yes.
Nobody can imitate Emily with what she does. If Emily has built like a Lego Millennium Falcon, I don't think that anybody else can do it. It's going to be special. No one else can do that.
Right.
And so even with me, like, I teach my techniques and my workflow and everything like that. But you know what? There's nobody who's gonna like capture what I capture better than me.
Right. You're
And
the
that's
only
something
one
that
with your vision. Right.
yeah, exactly.
And
And so that's what I believe in, and that's why I do teach, because like I still feel like I'm going to be unique, you know. And if someone once goes to that maybe to that length to imitate me, it's like okay, they're fighting an uphill battle. They're trying to be me where they should just be themselves.
Yes.
Now that doesn't say that we don't take inspiration from other artists. I firmly believe that we can and should take inspiration from other artists, even imitate, even give our own what I would consider version of art.
mhm.
But not every photographer feels that way. They feel that the sometimes you'll hear people like, I told this person about my idea, and what did they do? They went and shot it. And so I'd be like, great, then I can learn from their mistakes. Um, I just feel like there's nobody who's going to capture it like me. And that's my firm belief. Like a lot of people, they think that a location is their secret. Like, oh my gosh, I have this secret location. And okay, but it's like, that's never going to, like, I think the secret is in here. And until they remove your heart, they're not going to find your secrets. Don't get any ideas, anybody.
And Leon, I just have to say, I want to say thank you for sharing your insights. I There are very few times that I feel encouraged to do things, like genuinely encouraged, and I think tonight's episode.
Loincloth.
No, but you better stop. But I do want to say I feel encouraged to step out of my boundaries sometimes, and I think this was
Yeah.
one episode that genuinely I do feel encouraged to do that. So for that, I want to say thank you so much for being on with us tonight. Thank you for sharing your passion. I think that is incredibly apparent to anyone who listens to this. Please go book a session with Leon. Please go check out his work. His socials will be tagged in this episode. And do you have an Instagram that you'd like to share with us,
Sure.
or
On Instagram, I'm LJ Portraits. That's L as in Leon and J as in Johnson. So I'm LJ Portraits.
perfect? Um, well, with that being said, thank you so much for everyone for tuning in tonight. We want to thank everyone who tuned in, our supporters, subscribers, moderators, and producers. This episode, along with probably every other episode forever and ever, is going to be dedicated to Joe Capone, our moderator, fellow comedian, critic, encourager, and great friend. Find us pretty much wherever you tune into podcasts. For updates and announcements, please follow us on social media and help us, excuse me, and please help us reach our subscriber count goal. Excuse me. Uh, Thank you, everyone, and have a Miss Frizzle day. Take chances, make mistakes, get messy.
Do it.
That's right. Just do it. Thanks, everybody. Have a good
Thanks,
night.
guys.
Good night.
Bye.
And that's a